All right, so we've got the 4 steps to solving a problem. So in this case, we are going to just kind of walk through a problem, talking through these 4 steps. So step 1 is understanding, right? It's crucial that when you read a problem, you really understand what's being asked, what's being talked about. Then you move on to step 2, which is creating a plan. So we know that different problems require different mathematics. And sometimes that step 2 of just saying, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. Step 3 is then saying, okay, now that I have a plan, let's go ahead and knock it out. Step 4 is going back and saying, does my answer make sense? It does no good to do a bunch of math if you're totally off base. So it's always important to go back and say, yes, that makes sense based off what the question was asking. So let's go through a question and just kind of talk about the 4 steps. Okay, so we're going to describe how to use the 4 steps in this particular question. So Katie is putting up a 3-sided rectangular fence using the back of her house as the 4th side. The length of her house is 60 feet. She wants the width of the fenced-in yard to be 2/3 of the length. How much fencing will she need for the 3 sides? Now, at first, this question seems a little confusing because a 3-sided rectangular fence, no, rectangles have 4 sides. But that's where we see that we're going to use the back of the house as the 4th side. So when you're thinking through this, right, step 1 is understanding the problem. So that seems okay. We're going to, let me draw, here's her house. So the back of her house is the 4th side and she's building, right? This red is the fence. So understanding we are trying to build a fence. And if she wants to know how much fencing for these 3 sides, that means we are finding perimeter. So just understanding what the question is asking. That is crucial. Okay, so we want to find perimeter. We're finding the fence. Okay, I understand what the question is asking. Then it says devise a plan. Okay, so if we have ourselves this piece, we know that her spot is 60 feet. Knowing the rules of a rectangle, or the properties, I guess, we know the opposite side is also 60, right? We're devising a plan. Well, I've got to figure out, okay, perimeter. I know that perimeter is 2 length plus 2w. So I need the length and the width of my piece. So there's my plan. Find the length of the width and then put them into this formula. So steps 2 and 3 oftentimes are going to kind of work in conjunction with one another because you got to devise the plan, you got to carry it out. So as I say, okay, I've got to figure out the 4 sides, then knowing that I don't need this one in terms of my perimeter because that's the house. I just need fencing on these 3 sides. Now, we do know that we want the width, right? So this is the length. We want the width to be 2/3 the length. So if I plug in 60 for the length, 2/3 of 60, we want to just reduce some fractions, right? 3 goes into 60 20 times. 2 times 20 is 40. So these 2 sides are going to be 40. So in terms of carrying out my plan, I now need to plug these in. Now, this perimeter formula doesn't exactly work because I don't need both lengths. We know the perimeter is the addition of the outside of a figure. So we're going to take 40 plus 40 plus 60, right? These 3 sides, which means we think Katie's going to need 140 feet of fencing for those 3 sides. Now go back, right? Part of this was go back and figure out if this makes sense. I just said that she's going to need 140 feet. Does that make sense in this problem? We're talking about a fence. She only needs 3 sides. The length, which is the long side, is 60 feet. Does that make sense that the total, all 3 sides, is 140? Yep, that makes sense. I'm good to go. So that's kind of the thought process, right? Of just working through the understanding, creating a plan and knocking it out, and then making sure it makes sense in the scope of the problem. Think so?